Now, when you're driving down the motorway and the car in front of you has a private plate, what goes through your mind? Oh, I'd love one of those. How original. What a fantastically self-confident person they must be. Or maybe you think something less charitable.
The interesting thing is, whether you love them or you loathe them, private plates are still big business and they're getting more and more popular. Private number plate sales raised a record, get this, £102 million for the Treasury last year alone. That's a record.
For the Treasury. They get all that.
£102 million.
Have you got one?
No! What do you take? Am I being presumptuous saying, what do you take me for?
You are. Alan Sugar, Amir Khan, Robbie Williams, the late Paul Daniels, most of the royal family. 85058 if you've got one. What's the best one you've ever seen? Angela Barn is from number plate dealer regtransfers.co.uk. Afternoon to you, Angela.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. Have you got a personalised number plate?
I do have one on the car I'm driving. It's WE11FAT.
WE11.
WE11.
I can't. I'm so thick. You're going to have to explain that to me.
Well fat.
Well sat. Marvellous. Fat. As in
fat. As in fat.
I get you. Oh, finally, I've got the sense of it now.
See, Angela, as soon as Sarah asked me if I had one, I said, what do you take me for?
I know.
What is that? Is that a common response? What kind of people do get private plates?
The range is so big these days. You have people, so many different reasons why people buy them. We have people who've just passed their driving tests and they just want their initials on their car. Most people want to be a bit different, I suppose. But then you have a lot of businesses buying them for marketing purposes. You have people who do want to have their perfect number one plate. Mm-hmm. But that reaction that you just had isn't the norm anymore.
Oh, I'm out of step. not for the first time. And why do you think it's still rising? Because when I was a kid, right, you used to always know what the year was on the car, and if it was a T, and then and then it would go on one each year, and it'd be really exciting that day of the year when the new number was arriving in cars, and you'd try and spot them. Nowadays, I don't think most people even know how registration plates work or how old cars are.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the reasons why they have become quite popular, is because of the current style registrations. People were at the time finding it quite difficult to remember their registration. So they went out to purchase something with their initials on. It makes them finding their car a lot easier in the car park. They can remember it when they're putting it into the parking system. But they're just so much easier to find these days, especially with the internet. So 20 years ago, if you wanted to look for a registration, you would have to maybe look through papers. You might see a selection in there. Once you have the internet, you can just find anything that you want.
My dad just ties a ribbon round the aerial. That's how he finds it in the car park.
That is another way, unless someone takes it off.
But it just looks like we've been to a wedding all the time. Are they often bought as gifts?
Gifts are quite popular now, yeah. A lot of people do buy them for gifts. And once again, a few £100s. Although we had a lady a few weeks ago and she bought a gift, £18,000 for somebody, for a colleague, actually.
What'd you get for that?
Well, we can't actually say what she purchased. But, she bought something for £18,000. And earlier in the year, she bought something of a similar value for a different colleague of hers. So she's got very lucky colleagues.
We're getting a lot of texts, and maybe you can't tell us what 18,000 would get you, but you could tell us what these might be worth. We've got one from a chiropodist plate, chiropodist in Devon, which is 8IG70E. So big toe.
Nice.
How much would that be worth, do you think?
So that doesn't... So if it's
81G 70E.
So big
that
toe.
That doesn't sound like an actual registration format.
You're denying this.
Oh, this person has just made it up.
Unless it's, you could get big toe B16TOE, for example.
Yeah.
So unless they've just got it a little bit funny. But, they're quite difficult to put... I mean, we do have a valuation department here, so they would be looking at these all the time. But when it's something that specific, we'd probably put a few £1,000, a couple of £1,000 on it as a valuation.
Matthew Lewis is our big guest today. Matthew, I know you're listening to this. I can see you laughing with some hilarity at all of this. But it's a bit near the mark for you. Have you got a family member that's got one?
Not anymore. My brother did have a Leeds United number plate for a while. It was L500 UTD.
That sounds quite expensive.
Yeah, I think he paid a few grand for it at the time, and I think he did not get value for money when he sold it on. I think it was a bit of a regret of his.
He should have gone to Angela. How much should he have got for that, Angela? This
so
will kill him.
What was the registration again?
It was L500 UTD.
And he was a Leeds United fan.
Correct, yeah.
You see, something like that, we probably wouldn't value it at more than a couple of thousand.
Well, there you go. So maybe he wasn't too badly treated, as it turns out,
maybe.
Matthew. Now, let's just be honest. When you think about private number plates, do you think positive things about the car in front of you, or do you immediately have a kind of a judgment about them?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I am, mate.
Oh, gee. To be honest, I don't really make any kind of judgment. I don't really notice them all that often. No, I don't. It depends what they are. But I remember a lot of drivers that have driven, they sort of, because they have to buy cars quite regularly to make sure that the cars that they drive around with on film sets are always up to date and things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They tend to buy private number plates so that it sort of obscures how old the car is.
Yeah, that's right. Is it a status thing or a good way to hide the fact that your car's 15 years old, Angela?
A lot of people do that as well, to hide the car. So rather than, like you say, buy a car every year, just put a different number plate on there that's a dateless plate, and no one actually knows the difference at all. I mean, some people do keep their cars in such good condition. It's only the year plate that gives it away. So if you buy something like, if you had a 1977 ML or something like that, no one actually knows how old a car is at all.
The Queen does still have A1, doesn't she? That's the ultimate reg.
It is the ultimate reg. I don't believe she has that.
Really?
I mean, the Queen is the only person that doesn't actually need one, I believe.
Brilliant.
And A1 is one of those plates which everybody talks about. And
Is it a myth?
No, it's not a myth. It's not a myth. People believe it's the first one that was ever issued, but it wasn't. We believe it was something like the Sultan of Brunei that has it, but not the Queen.
What's the best one you've ever seen before we let you go, Angela?
Well, the one I had on my car previously, I wouldn't say it was the best one, but it caused a lot of controversy. I had Pen 15 on the car, which I didn't particularly like driving around in.
Why did you have it then?
It was a company smart car, and so they thought it would be funny to put it on there.
Especially with you, with a woman driving it. Brilliant.
Yeah, yes.
Oh.
Loads of people are getting in touch with the ones that they've got. One listener saying his horse lorry has NAG 49 on it. That is very good. Another listener saying, when I split from my wife, she called me a boring old fart, so now my number plate is BOF. All kinds of reasons here.
Keep coming to us on 85058. Angela, thanks a million for talking to us and for being
No
such
problem.
a good sport at your work as well. My goodness.
And when we had Graham Barton getting in touch from Homes Under the Hammer, that felt like Homes Under the registration plate there as well, getting nice valuations.
Angela Barn from number plate dealer regtransport.co.uk. Our big guest today, you've heard him already, it's Matthew Lewis. Was 11 when he landed the role of Neville Longbottom in the Harry Potter series. 16 years on. Wow. A string of TV, movie and stage credits behind him. He's set to star in the London premiere of Unfaithful.
Yes, he's going from Harry Potter to a love rotter. It is the role of a young man having an affair with an older woman in Owen McCafferty's black comedy. It's at the Found 111 Theatre. And away from stage, Matthew is also back on our screens tonight. It's the 4th series of Ripper Street, which starts on BBC Two. You're a busy boy at the moment, Matthew.
Yeah, it's been a pretty intense few weeks. In my defence, Peter, my character in the play, is a male escort,
Yes,
so it's
his job.
Not quite as straightforward as being completely unfaithful.
A rotter. No, quite right. Listen, Owen McCafferty, wonderful writer. This is quite a departure for him. I mean, it's a four-hander, isn't it? But it's about love, essentially. This one.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's about so many things. It's one of those plays that when you read it, I read it as sort of it's very funny and it's very raw and all this kind of things. But actually, when you break it down, and we sat around the rehearsal table and really started to unpick the characters and what they're doing and where they're going, and it's incredibly layered. There is so much in this play, and it's very difficult to kind of sum it up, what it's about in a very concise sentence. To be honest, it's about so much.
Owen writes a lot about Belfast from a Belfast perspective with the accents. Have you had to perfect a Belfast accent, or has he let you off?
No, we're not sort of specifying where it is. Originally, it was on at the Fringe in Edinburgh
2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so it had, although it's written in a sort of Belfast perspective, it's not specified. It's quite ambiguous, and so I think they made it in Glasgow, I believe, when they did it at the Fringe. And so now it's doing its London premiere. We're just going to leave it open. There's about 3 different accents in the show amongst the 4 of us. So.
Well, that's it. And you've got 2 Irish, but Southern Irish actors in with you, don't you? You've got Sean Campion and the wonderful Niamh Cusack starring alongside you.
I mean, in terms of doing a play like this, is the first time I've really done anything this intense on the stage, and to have those 2 on board, and Ruta as well, like having 3 incredibly well-established actors on this show has been invaluable for me. I've been just like a sponge for the last 3 weeks, just trying to take on board as much as possible. And with particularly Niamh and Sean, it's just it's a real privilege to be working alongside them both.
Because you've been workshopping it and rehearsing it for the last 3 weeks. How much has it changed in that time?
Oh, remarkably so. Yeah, it's incredible, really. I mean, you have your instincts when you read any material. You have your actor's instinct that comes in, and then very quickly, as you start to, as I say, unpick it, you start to think, oh, that's not actually what the direction that should be going in, or it's not necessarily the most interesting choice that I've made there. And also, it completely depends on how the other person's going to play it. It has to be a very fluid process where you're completely open to any outside input and influence. And so, yeah, I mean, it's changed quite drastically, actually, from day one. I think it's got better. I hope it's got better. We'll find out on Thursday when we open, I guess.
How much fun playing a male escort?
It's interesting, absolutely. It's not a world that I am familiar with in any way, shape or form. So a lot of research has had to happen there.
That must have been interesting.
Yeah, I watched some documentaries and I've sort of been online. I mean, my Google history is quite interesting at the minute. But we had a guy come in and talk to us he was supposed to be there for an hour. I think we called him for 2 hours and he was very open and very articulate, and he would let us ask him anything, really, which for me was just, I've got pages and pages of notes from that interview, effectively is what it was. But it was absolutely fascinating, sort of getting into the psychology of it, and also the psychology of the clients too, because a large part of what being an escort is to be what they want you to be. So you have to kind of almost psychoanalyze your clients as well to figure out what it is that they want from you. And so that's been a really interesting process.
It's really interesting to me. I'm sort of interviewing him but by proxy through you now, because I'm kind of interested in the psychology of him and whether or not he liked his job.
Well, I think actually the moral side of it was what he ended up became too much for him.
Right.
But it wasn't what I thought of originally. I thought that it would be the sex simply that we would struggle with. That's what he would find difficult, because there is an element of that does come into it. But actually, he said it was more just the pure escorting, just the going out and dating these women and having to be a friend and to be a companion for these women. He felt that became somewhat morally dubious because it was all fictional, and he couldn't justify that in his mind. And once that happens, there's no going back.
Yeah, because it wasn't real, I guess. It was all being paid for, I suppose.
Exactly, yeah. And as much as you try and become their, and sometimes you can end up actually genuinely becoming their friends and think this is too far because I actually like this person and yet I'm still taking money for this, and it becomes a very muddy waters, and that's kind of a little bit of what happens in this show.
Well, it sounds almost like if you're a male escort in real life, you have to be an actor.
Yeah, I mean, we made a lot of these comparisons throughout the rehearsal process and with the guy who came in to talk to us. It's there are a lot of similarities where you have to go into work and you're always going to be a piece of you there. You can't just completely leave your entire personality back home. But you do have to put up these fronts and play these characters, and you have to have the richness of that and be able to play it truthfully. But then how, does that then ever impact on your personal life? Can you maintain a relationship with somebody else truthfully, knowing that every night you go out and do that? Or do you play these characters to such a degree that it's never really you? Which is what we do as actors at the same time.
It's really interesting. So your character, you, as you say, playing a male escort. So who are the other 3 parts of this play?
Well, there's my girlfriend, played by Ruta Gedmintas, who we are sort of well, it's how our relationship is put under strain from what I do, basically. And so there's all that to play out there. And then, as we've already mentioned, so Niev plays one half of the older couple with Sean Campion, and they've been together for 30 odd years. And through a course of events, Niev ends up hiring me, my services in the play, and so we end up having that relationship, but also by pure coincidence, my girlfriend and her husband end up meeting as well. And so over the process of like 72 hours, all of us all connect with each other and change each other in a way that we never thought possible. And it makes us all have to go home and confront our own relationships and our own problems and try and we'll come out the other side of it, really.
The way you describe it, it sounds a very intimate, intense play. And that venue, is it found one? How do you say it? Is it found 111 or found 111?
I think it's 111.
111, but it's a pop-up theatre. It's where Andrew Scott from Sherlock did The Dazzle. It's where James Norton from War and Peace did Bug. And the audience is going to be all over you.
Yeah. I mean, when I first saw it, I saw the rehearsals, the actual theatre space about a month ago when we were doing a photo shoot for the play. And suddenly my heart sunk and thought, oh my word, this is intense. I mean, as you say, the audience are practically on the stage. They are right there. But, you know, having read the show and been rehearsing it, that's exactly what this show needs, because it's exactly what you just described there. It's very intimate. It's very visceral. It's almost like you're interrupting somebody's personal space. You've caught an argument on a tube platform, and you know you don't want to be a part of it, but you can't quite tear your eyes away from it, and you have to be able to feel like you're a fly on the wall amongst what's happening to these four people, and it never at any point, I think, will feel like you've got a nice glass of wine and you've got a programme and you're watching a show. It will feel like it's quite uncomfortable, actually.
Have we made you nervous by reminding you?
Sure, yeah, a little bit. We open on Thursday. We've had, to be fair, we've had a few people in the rehearsal room when we've been running it, and they've been sort of, the first time was a bit, wow, that is going to be interesting. But at the same time, I think that's going to give it so much energy.
Yeah.
And I think that intimacy will actually change the nature of the show. I think I'm actually quite excited to get it into the space now.
That's our guest, Matthew Lewis, who's here until 3 o'clock. Of course, he was Neville Longbottom in Harry Potter. We'll be asking you about Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. We also want to hear about Ripper Street, which you've joined the cast of. It starts tonight on BBC Two. We're going to hear more from Matthew after the news with Sarah. Thank you for listening to Afternoon Edition. We're here till 4 o'clock and until 3 o'clock. Our guest is Matthew Lewis, who of course was Neville Longbottom in the Harry Potter films. He's been telling us all about his new play. It's called Unfaithful. It opens on this Thursday and it runs till October at the Found 111 Theatre in London. And Matthew, one of the unusual things for you, or the slight coincidence, is you were 100 metres away from Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is on, I think it is about that close, isn't it? 100 metres
it
down
really
the
is,
road at the Palace Theatre. So every night there are just going to be hundreds of Harry Potter fans in the area.
We're actually rehearsing at Found. We've been there for the last 3 weeks. I have to walk past the Palace Theatre every day, which is an interesting prospect in the evening when everyone's getting ready to go in for the Cursed Child.
So what's happened there? Do you think that's going to... They're obviously going to recognise you, aren't they?
Yeah, there's been a few of them.
Yeah.
Sort of being chased down the street to the tube station. But it's fine. If some of them want to come and see our play at the same time, that'd be great.
If they chase you into the theatre, that might be that might be better.
Would it be suitable for the younger Harry Potter fans?
Maybe not the younger ones. No, absolutely not. I'd say it's definitely an over 18s show. But I mean, the wonderful thing about Harry Potter, of course, was that the demographic was so far-reaching. My mum was a huge fan. A lot of people that were the huge fans at the time, my age, are all now 26, 27. And it doesn't seem to have waned slightly either. Those people are still as big fans as they were back when they were 11 years old. So they can come and watch it.
I remember when David Tennant did, it was at Hamlet at the RSC. The RSC made him have the rule that he was at the stage door. He was only allowed to sign the programme from that production because so many people were bringing up Doctor Who memorabilia and all sorts. Will you have to impose the same kind of rule?
I've no idea. I mean, I hope not. I don't really mind it. It's kind of part and parcel of it. When I've done plays before, we've had people come to the stage door that haven't always been wanting to sign, whatever the material is from the show. But I mean, I've been very fortunate that I've had a very diverse career, and you just have to acknowledge that there's always going to be fans of other productions, and Harry Potter being, one of the biggest things in the world. You have to just acknowledge that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't seen it yet, have you, or read it? But it's on your to-do list. It's on the bedside table, is it?
I was invited to come and see it a couple of weeks ago, but unfortunately, I was rehearsing. I couldn't get over, but I felt terribly guilty knowing how in demand the tickets are. So it's been rain checked. I'll be going later on in the year.
But you are still very much part of the Harry Potter family. I know you went to the set of Fantastic Beasts when it was filming at the Leavesden Studios. What did you see there?
Nothing that I can tell you about.
What a go.
I was just going to... Actually, I was only going to see David Heyman and David Yates, who I'd worked with. Obviously, they'd produced and directed the previous Harry Potter films. And so I was going to go see those guys, and it was David Heyman just said, would you want to come and have a little tour of the studio?
Yeah, and it was while you were there, wasn't it, that you found out that Alan Rickman had died?
Yeah, it was, actually. It was really surreal. We just sort of met Eddie Redmayne and chatted to him, and they were just winding down with filming, so everyone was really buoyant and in a good mood. And then David said, well, let's take you down to where the Great Hall used to be, and now we've got, some other new sets and things. And we went down there, and that's where we got the news came through. And it was the strangest thing, because I told David, and he was just completely taken. Neither of us really knew what to say. And being in those corridors at that time, it suddenly brought so many memories back. It was very, very odd, very odd moment.
Of Alan and seeing him in different places and things that he said and told you.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. 10 years working on the films, a lot of the memories sort of blend into one and can become quite confused. But at that moment in time, a lot of them sort of stood out and became very vivid, it brought a lot back.
Yeah, I'm sure it was very, very poignant, I'm sure, for everybody there. I mean, when you last saw him, he had some good advice for you, didn't he? He sat you down, or you sat down together and talked about what you should do next in your career.
I mean, I would have been 20 years old, and I'd just finished, really, or he'd just finished his last day on the last film, and I just wanted to go and, I mean, he was basically, for me, was the one that I looked up to the most. I thought his body of work was remarkable, and everything he did, I was such a huge fan of. So I just wanted to go and say thanks, basically. Nothing more to it than that. It was just to go and say thank you for 10 years, and thank you for letting me watch you work. And he said, come on in, have a sit down, have a cup of tea. And we just sat and chatted, and he discussed, it was his recommendation that I move to London and explore theatre. And really try and go back to basics with a lot of things, which is what I've largely tried to do, to be honest, over the last sort of 5 years. I mean, I've been fortunate that I've been able to do TV and film at the same time, but a lot of it has been just trying to explore the craft, really, in a way that he did.
So he's partly responsible for what you're doing at the moment?
Well, I mean, all the guys on that film are, really, but yeah, I'd say Alan is definitely up there. You can't work with people of that caliber for 10 years and not absorb things and learn things and take things on board. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say without a doubt that so many people through those years influenced my career, and probably none more than him, yeah.
What's it like watching the careers of your other colleagues on those films, Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson and Rupert Grint? Do you follow their careers with interest? Are you in touch a lot? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant to see what everyone's doing. Everyone's doing such far-reaching, diverse things. It's brilliant, and we try and catch up, whenever we can, whenever we're all in town together. Last year, there was me, Dan, and Tom got together. I went for dinner with Emma as well last year, and just hearing about what everyone's up to. So that was sort of Emma was just about to start on Beauty and the Beast at the time, so hearing about that was really exciting. Dan was trying to figure out which scripts he wanted to choose, and he's ended up doing the Swiss Army Man, which just looks incredible. Tom's now out he moved to LA, but I think he's going to be up in Vancouver doing a TV show up there. So it's really cool seeing what everyone's doing, that everyone's doing well, because you just never know when something like that finishes. You never know how successful people are going to go on to be, whether they're going to get the opportunities again. And I'm just so proud that everyone, has cracked on. Everyone has worked hard. They've not rested on their laurels, and they are doing brilliant work.
It would be wonderful if they all came to see you in Unfaithful and walked by the cursed child on the way there. Could you imagine the scenes there would be? Hey, we were talking earlier in the programme about the power of a J.K. Rowling tweet. She's tweeted about people going abroad to voluntourism is the phrase she used. You know all about the power of a J.K. Rowling tweet.
I know what's coming now.
Your attitude cover shoot in your pants. Yeah. J.K. Rowling's tweet. Not as bad as watching Dan in Equus. That's when Daniel Radcliffe got his whole kit off for being on stage. But close. Warn me next time, she said.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we did that shoot, and basically I'd sort of made a pact with myself several years ago, which was to not shy away from anything that scared me, basically, whether that involved moving to London, whether it meant taking roles that would challenge me and push me, taking theatre work. I mean, at the time, I didn't anticipate that it would extend to photo shoots, but there I was in the room, and I'd been training for a film. The photographer, who I trust implicitly, had suggested, you want to do some topless ones. And I think traditionally I would have gone, not really for me, that, to be honest. I just thought, well, you know what, if I do that, then that's me bottling it. That's me taking the easy road. So I just thought, why not? Let's just do it. Because who knows what's going to happen. And that's kind of the way I'm trying to approach a lot of my career, really, is to push myself and take those gambles. So I did it, and I never really anticipated that it would go the way it went. I often forget the global nature of the internet and how it's all accessible at the click of a button. So I thought it'd be maybe a little ripple in the UK press, maybe.
It was a lot more than that.
And then when Joe tweeted it, my Twitter kind of went a bit mad, and that's when I turned my phone off.
It is a classic for child stars, isn't it? You get Miley Cyrus going naked on a wrecking ball. Does it help you?
How lovely to be included in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball. I think.
Does it help redefine you, though?
Again, I mean, it wasn't really for me. I didn't sit there and go, yeah, this is the one that's gonna showcase me as someone completely different from Neville. It was literally just that idea of, well, why not?
Yeah.
As I say, I had been training for that film and
thought, well, I probably look all right. Why not?
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll be a good little litmus test. I mean, if I look terrible, then I need to work harder for this film, don't I?
We didn't mention the other tweet that she sent, which was something along the lines of, I'm very proud of you, whatever you do, now go and put some clothes on.
Yeah, and don't worry, I will be from now on. I mean, whether it helped or not, I don't really know.
But it did sort of change people's perception of you, didn't it? Whether you liked it or not, you did then get the heartthrob sex symbol tag, which you've been sort of shrugging your shoulders about ever since.
Which is the opposite of Neville, because Neville, you had to have the fake sticky out ears, the wonky teeth.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, and but I haven't really ended up doing those kind of roles since, with the exception of Me Before You, which I was training for when I was playing the triathlete. Mm-hmm. The roles that haven't been focused around, the romantic lead or the heartthrob, which is kind of good. It's nice to know that you can, if you need to, you can, get into good shape and attempt to do that. But the roles that I've been allowed to do and I've taken on board have been quite the opposite of that, really, with like Happy Valley and this show and stuff. It's I find characters that are a bit darker, sort of more interesting, that have got more of an edge to them and more to discover and more of a challenge, really, ultimately.
Sure.
The character in Happy Valley was not something I'd ever I'd ever come across before. That was that took a lot of work.
Nasty piece of work.
Yeah, basically, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And but I thought it was very interesting to read about how you, I don't know, how you dealt as a young man, as a teenager, when you're surrounded by young, attractive girls on a film set, and you've got wonky teeth that you're not allowed to fix, and you've got to wear a fat suit. It's kind of cruel.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a prime example of me, I think, which I did a lot in my younger years, was not appreciating just the professional level of what I was doing.
Yeah.
I don't think that I was as focused. I think that I was.
Well, you're a teenager. You're a young man.
Yeah, and I was doing school at the same time. I'm going through puberty or whatever, and you're sort of thinking, oh, why do I have to put this fat suit on every day? This is annoying me. I don't want to play this. I want to play the action hero, this kind of thing. And then as you get older and you start to really appreciate what acting is and what the art is and what is interesting, then that starts to dissipate a little bit, and you start to appreciate and you take it more as a career and more as a profession and more as an art, if I can say that without being pretentious, and you start to just appreciate what it is you're doing. And so yeah, I mean, I admit as a youth I maybe had that attitude, but I've tried very much, or not even tried. I mean, nowadays I don't have that at all. I mean, I remember on Happy Valley, and I just did a film out in Budapest called Terminal, and I was like, can I have like red on my nose so it looks like I've been rubbing my nose a lot, and can you give me blotchy skin and have my hair really greasy, and just trying to do the opposite of what I wanted to do when I was a teenager.
Talking about working on your body, though, you are sporting a marvellous moustache in the new series of Ripper Street. How long have you been working on that bad boy?
I had to wear that for 8 months. that was my moustache for 8 months. Ralph Ineson told me a while ago, because he grew a moustache for Finchy in The Office. Mm-hmm. And I remember chatting to him about it, and he said to me, never ever grow a moustache for a job. You might think it's good at the time, but you will regret it. And I
why
didn't heed those words. Well, I'll tell you why. Because the novelty wears off very, very quickly, and then you realise that you have to wear a ridiculous moustache for 8 months in your personal life, which is fine in East London, but less so when you go home to Leeds.
It's okay if you're Tom Selleck.
Yeah. No, Tom Selleck, yeah, that's very, very different kettle of fish from me going back home to see my friends who think, oh, hey, you've moved to London, grown a moustache, you look ridiculous.
Yeah, I bet that was the kindest thing that they said to you, to be fair.
Yeah, and I mean, it worked very well in the 80s, but it is increasingly more repellent to women nowadays, I believe.
And was that all your moustache? That's all you?
It was eventually. I grew one, and then I don't know why, the producers told me that I looked too virile. That's a quote.
Wow.
So I had to shave
They'd
it
seen
off.
your attitude shoot, hadn't they?
Yeah, I don't know, but it had to go. So I shaved it off. The director was not impressed. He wanted the moustache to stay. So I had to glue it. I had to glue one on, a second-hand moustache for the first...
A second-hand moustache?
Yeah, it was Jonathan Rhys-Meyer's moustache from the Tudors, I was told.
Stop it.
Yeah, they didn't have time to get me my own made up, so because they made me shave it off the morning of work.
But he wore that for ages in the Tudors.
I hope he washed it.
Well, yeah, so do I. I wore it for like 3 weeks, and then it was quite difficult because I was doing a different accent, and you have to sort of do a lot of facial jaw warm-ups and things, and trying to get my mouth around these Cockney words. It used to ping off all the time. Usually when I was talking to Jerome Flynn, it'd ping off and they'd start laughing. So I had to grow my own, and after about 3 weeks I grew my own back, and as I say, I had that until the following 8 months later.
Well, people can see that moustache tonight, 9 o'clock, BBC Two, Ripper Street Series 4. I think people have got confused with Ripper Street because it was on the BBC and then it just went off to Amazon, and this premiered on Amazon in January, but now it is back on the BBC tonight, and this is Series 4 starting if people want to pick up. So where are we?
As far as I believe, it got axed by the BBC after 2 seasons, and then Amazon took it on, and then Amazon did such a tremendous job with it that the BBC ended up taking it back. So it is still made exclusively by Amazon, but then it does go on to BBC eventually. So here we are now, 7 months later, when BBC are finally getting it.
And your character is part of the new regime of prison officers.
Yeah, basically. So
prison officers, police officers.
Police officers, yeah. So it's coming towards the turn of the century. I think we're in 1897 or something like that. And Drum is the new desk sergeant at Lehman Street, and he is kind of this new generation, as you say, of police officers that are very cerebral and very meticulous, kind of walking in the footsteps of Reed, Matthew McFadden's character, and that, you know, policing, modern police work is more about technology and forensics than it is about just going out and cracking skulls. And so that puts him at odds with some of the older officers and some of the younger sergeants who do like going out and cracking skulls. So there's quite a bit of a professional rivalry with the other sergeant, Thatcher, who's the detective sergeant, and we sort of come to disagreements several times over the best course of action for policing. But it's kind of like, because this new generation, it's almost a bit like Reed and Drake when they first started, because Jerome Flynn's character was very much a bruiser, whereas Reed was much more mental and cerebral in terms of his approach. So we're kind of like mirrors of those two, but a younger generation, and respectively those two take us under their wing.
I love Jerome Flynn. Best ever career development of all time, I think, Game of Thrones and doing Ripper Street.
I thought you were going to say his singing career with Robson.
No. I thought I said career development. But no, I just think he's great. What's he like to work with? And Matthew McFadden, what do they like to work with every day?
Superb. I've been so fortunate over the years that whenever I join a show, I am invariably working with some of the greatest actors of our time, really, and those two are no exception. Jerome's brilliant. He's just so much fun to be around. Really friendly, really open, really warm. And he's not a natural Cockney, so we were both doing sort of these Cockney accents, and we'd be constantly making sure each other wasn't going into Dick Van Dyke territory. So that was quite enjoyable. And Matthew, he's a classically trained actor who can effortlessly move from theatre to film to television, and he's just so wonderful to watch. And again, very much like Jerome, very welcoming, has no pretense, no ego. As much as it's their show, it's their baby, but they're so generous as actors that they're so welcoming of new people, and will hear, you know, opinions on scenes and new directions, and they never want the focus to be on them if it doesn't need to be, or it's not specified. They're more than happy to give up time and effort, and that means a lot when you're a young actor joining an established cast and people who've had such diverse established careers. That is crucial, because it creates an environment of freedom, really, where you can play around, you can
thrive.
You have that safety to give an opinion, and it might be wrong, it might be terrible, but you don't fear trying it. And that's what acting's about a lot of the time. It's having the confidence to try things.
What a great year you've had when you think you've done Happy Valley, you've got Ripper Street coming, you've got the play Unfaithful opening, and also Me Before You, a romantic comedy you did that's taken almost 200 million at the worldwide box office. And that, you mentioned it, you played a triathlete, you're from Yorkshire. The Brownlees, a big inspiration?
Yeah, you know what? It was a little bit as well, because obviously after London 2012, such a huge fan of everything they were doing. Knowing they're from my neck, I'm from Horsforth originally, right, which we now have, the Horsforth Library is now named the Brownlee Library, and the local pub next to my parents is now the Brownlee Arms. So, you know, very much had one eye on those two. And so when I was thinking about physique and what he wanted to look like, because he's a personal trainer, and I thought, well, do I want to look like a personal trainer in a gym who's quite big? And I thought, well, actually, when you look at triathletes, when they are running, you know, 6 miles in 28 minutes, and serious triathletes, they're not actually that big and bulky. And so I did, I kind of, they were a bit of a model for me in terms of my training regimes and when I went into the PT and that they got for the film, and I said that this is what I want to look like, they were kind of my inspiration. Yeah.
Have you been enjoying the Olympics then? Absolutely,
yeah. It's been brilliant. I mean, it's because the play's been quite all-consuming, and getting home from rehearsals and your head's a bit fried, it's quite nice to be able to just put the Olympics on and decompress and just have it there in the background. And
what really captured your imagination?
I mean, I loved all of the cycling. That was just the indoor track cycling was just remarkable. I remember it from 2012 and how special it was then. But it's just all mad. It's all completely insane. I don't know who invented any of it. The Omnium, the sprint, the
It took me a good
Kieran.
2 hours to understand how it worked.
It's
And it was
not-
almost over by then.
And that little fella on the motorbike who kept getting it wrong.
The
and it was
delivery
all-
driver that took the wrong turn, yes.
Yeah, the Derny or whatever it's called. The
Kieran, yeah.
Yeah, that was nuts. It's nuts. I don't know who created it, but I loved it. It was brilliant.
Who have been your Team GB heroes?
So many. I mean, okay, well, you know, the two. I mean, how beautiful is it that you've got 10 gold medals with Jason Kenny and Laura Trott getting married? That's so wonderful. But I think personally, I think that it has to be Mo Farah. The fairy tale story of a Somalian refugee, probably now surely becoming a knight of the realm. That is just like, what a story, what an athlete.
You could end up playing the coach in the movie of that.
Yeah, there's got to be a movie, surely.
Matthew, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Our guest on the programme today, Matthew Lewis.